Because what the beauty stands for here is what puts us in touch directly, here and now, with the essence of who we are. So it's something which, again, has direct connotation with the term Camatkara, in a sense that the true experience of beauty has the capacity to hold the otherwise rational unfoldment of thought processes. It makes us speechless, even if for a moment, even for a fraction of the moment. And that speechlessness is that space where that what is now prompted, that experience, is beauty.
So maybe just to give our readers a very first idea, what does Camatkara mean? Just in a nutshell.
Sure. Well, Camatkara is a Sanskrit term which has a specific meaning as it designates aesthetic astonishment. So it is sometimes translated as an ecstatic state of wonder or astonishment, but in the context of using this as a cover of the book, which is the full title, Camatkara, the Hidden Path. Camatkara here represents that quality of aesthetic rapture or aesthetic astonishment. And the term is associated with how it was used by Kashmir Shaiva masters, particularly by Abhinavagupta, who lived in the 10th century and who is credited for giving the Kashmir Shaivism the height in terms of philosophical expositions, for which it is known to this day. So that's the term Camatkara in the context of the work, in the context of the book. But of course, it can be simply translated as astonishment, being arrested by something, breathtaking, a heart skipping a beat, something along these lines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is an astonishment or rapture as an immediate and spontaneous response, I think, that you're talking about. So this has nothing to do with acquired preferences or with personal taste. This is very spontaneous, very different from what we might maybe mistake for this.
Well, yes, the term itself, Camatkara, denotes that what we are arrested, or what our perception is arrested by. So in that sense, it has this universal appeal and can be applied universally in terms of what it stands for. But also it has another side to it, which is used in terms of that particular response, that appreciator of beauty, the love of beauty, someone whose, let's say, perceptual capacity is honed deliberately to that tuned level of receptivity, where the observer, the spectator, anticipates. So in other words, in that sense, it is spoken from that slightly different, let's say, vintage point and applicable to the experience of the work of art. So let's say the experience that all of us are open to, irrespective of the creed, where we come from, what walks of life, what have you. A breathtaking view, a breathtaking seascape, landscape, sunset, something, an astonishing sense of something that is experienced at this very moment. So this is something which equalizes us all. And yet there is an additional value of how that term is also used, is in terms of how that astonishment is derived from the direct communion with the work of art, be it music composition or verse poetry, from as short as haiku to maybe the whole, like let's say, a poem or theatrical experience, cinema, singing hearing a song from somewhere. It doesn't matter, it's like a painting. So all works of art that comes under that category has that capacity for, let's say, a more of a experienced eye, for someone who could be said have an eye, ear, taste, tongue of a connoisseur. Just like someone who, let's say, can distinguish myriads of scents of a particular rose. You see? So we don't want to restrict now the term Camatkara just to that. And this is why it's important that we speak about it in the context of what it opens up, the possibility of refinement of perceptual capacities. So that's what the book also speaks to in some of its chapters.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you also mentioned the term beauty, and I remember in the book it says that truth as a tangible reality is shown by beauty, and everybody is secretly driven to it or even also by it. Can you explain this a little bit further?
Certain terms in most of the languages that are, let's say, in use today, they are being used so much that they somehow lose the capacity to convey what the term really meant to represent. And perhaps the term beauty is the most telling example, because after all, it has been used and utilized by industries. There's an industry, and also goes under that name. So on one hand, everyone would argue that they have their own sense of what is beautiful and what is not. But this is very interesting, and I would like to maybe take an opportunity to give this, to dive into this from a certain angle where we might introduce that dimension to what beauty represents, which is hidden from you, somehow has been removed, somehow has been washed away maybe with that continuous use of the term. Like we can say that there are some other terms like love, God, right? There are terms that are used on a daily basis. They're part of the vernacular, part of something that flies out of our tongue. But then the original meaning of these terms, of these words, denotes much more than what we use when we repeatedly throw these words and lavishly, let's say, decorate our speech with these terms. So beauty is one of such examples, and maybe one of the most telling one. So this is something perhaps to look into the possibility of reestablishing and rehabilitating the term from its daily casual use into what the term beauty represents here, at least in the context of what this work was dedicated to. And in that sense, beauty will be spoken here in terms of the reference to the utmost reality of what we consider ourselves to be. So beauty is not something that we say, oh, this is beautiful, because we find it somehow beautiful in terms of that what is now being somehow settled on as that driven by tastes. And we know that artists are the guardians, they are the forefront of redefining that so as not to settle on a status quo where that becomes a shallow affair of what the term represents here, what the beauty stands for. Because what the beauty stands for here is what puts us in touch directly, here and now, with the essence of who we are. So it's something which, again, has direct connotation with the term Camatkara, in a sense that the true experience of beauty has the capacity to hold the otherwise rational unfoldment of thought processes. It makes us speechless, even if for a moment, even for a fraction of the moment. And that speechlessness is that space where that what is now prompted, that experience, is beauty.
Yes, I think that there is actually a lot of confusion about what beauty really and truly is, because, as you mentioned, there is a whole beauty industry, for instance, that does not want you to perceive, for example, the beauty in an elderly face. And also we live in an age where often things that are artificial rather than artful are considered beautiful or are admired by many people, or things that are only constructed to demonstrate power or wealth. All those decadent things are mistaken as beautiful and desirable by many people. So how can we gently push aside the veil to really get to see beauty, perceive real beauty again?
Well, it's a big question. I don't know if there is an easy or ready-made solution to how do we perceive beauty. How do we perceive beauty? Because in a way, beauty, as we speak of it now, in the context of what the beauty truly represents, is on par with this, what beauty often paired with in terms of this ultimate state of affairs, let's say, as these values. And so beauty is never spoken outside of the qualities of truth, truthfulness, and in a sense of this, what the sense truth represents. So just as beauty became very much an subjectively driven concept, in the same way truth today is constantly manipulated. So we don't know what is true as opposed to what is untrue. We know that truth is relative, and there is an absolute truth. Truth which is not based on, let's say, that what polarity here gives as the possibility for putting something against something else. But the truth, in terms of the, let's say, capital T, represents here foundational qualities of who we are. At least that's how the perennial traditions view this. In the same way here, beauty is that what transcends experience itself. So beauty is not even in the acquired taste, not in the sense of what we settle on as a collective state of, let's say, shared ideas on what represents beauty. A lot has been spoken in terms of the etalons of beauty. And again, there comes a time in history when those who are the guardians of this, they rise, rebel, and demand reaffirmation. So like we've seen this in terms of the history of arts, which is inseparable from the history of tastes, how this has been shaken up periodically. And even now, as we live today, and the term beauty becomes more and more shallow, as you have pointed out, because of the way that the demands of, let's say, that are driven by some other incentives. That often the industries have this as the inner mechanics that drives it all. We know that the profit, something that needs to be sold, and it has to be sold very quickly, and we also never have the time. So there is also this connection to time as well. Because in order for truly experience something, in order for being touched by beauty, there needs to be time. There needs to be time, because that, what we speak of allowing ourselves through time, gives access to timelessness. But we can't afford it in our day and age. Everything becomes at the mercy of, well, quick. It has to seduce your senses, here and now, very quickly. And so that's the dilemma. This is why my response is a little bit maybe less optimistic, like, oh, that's how we can put people in touch with beauty. Well, it's not as easy as I can see it. It's the process of refinement. And that process of refinement is inseparable from turning within. Return to certain fundamental qualities, both in terms of our perceptual capacity to experience beauty as a given, as something inborn, but also in terms of retracing the possibility of understanding that there is no quick solution to anything. We can't just hope that we can have this leapfrog, was that some kind of like a quick access, because the beauty, just here as anything truly of value, doesn't let itself in unless there is a certain discipline on our part, even I would say, that quality as a form of a spiritual practice, that it has to be given a chance for it to be appreciated. Without that, we're just skimming the surface, endlessly skimming the surface.
Yes. And it came to my mind that there might be other things blocking us from really delving into beauty. As maybe also some people might say, how can I really dive into beauty, indulge in beauty, while there are so many there's so much trouble, there's so much pain everywhere. Even if I do see the beauty as well, I really could be able to perceive that, but maybe I feel blocked because I do not give myself permission. What would you reply here?
Again, of course, it's very easy to get sidelined by the argument of how can there be beauty if there's so much suffering in the world, or how to reconcile that. So not just, oh, I don't have time because my life is full of responsibilities. I'm on the go. I have to, life meets ends. But even in that, when we speak about beauty here, when we speak about that experience, it is opened absolutely everywhere. This is the very important realization, that the experience of beauty here is not limited only to, let's say, visual contemplation of something we feel somehow we have communion with. Beauty can be experienced in the least likely set of circumstances. And then we can speak of beauty in myriad of ways, not just reserving it for, let's say, more artful experiences. There's beauty in a situation, beauty in the way we find ourselves arrested by something, beauty even in the sense of being taken by an entire surprise by something, where it again arrests that linearity of the rational way, the thought unfolds, just gasp by the experience, sheer experience of something, can be shocking, and yet has beauty in that. So beauty, again, I want to refer to that, what beauty here, let's say at least how I was referring that in the work that the Camatkara, the hidden path here, represents. It's the fundamental quality of our awareness. So beauty here is not some kind of an additional something to add into our life. It's a fundamental quality which gives us the possibility to access that divine status in us in all circumstances. Just as when we experience some shocking revelation, there's a possibility for truth to shine, reveal into us, intuit. In the same way, beauty here has that possibility of reconnecting us to the very, very core of who we are.
Yes, and thus it is not at all an escape from the world, but it is even some very deep healing. It has a healing quality in this world. So maybe we can also dwell on this a little bit. I think you also mentioned the Dostoevsky quote, "Beauty will save the world." Maybe you can explain this a little bit in detail.
Yes, well, I'm very happy you brought this up, because indeed, we have very little knowledge and very little insights into what the sense of beauty truly here represents in terms of its impact on our sense of well-being. So even from, let's say, concessionally speaking, therapeutical point of view, we know very well from the place of psychology what the beautiful environment and what the sense of beauty does to us. And also we know what the lack of it does to us. As an opposite example, we know, for example, the studies were made how patients recover faster in places where they are in a room which is open to, let's say, a beautiful tree garden, some kind of like leafage, rather than into some internal courtyard or something industrious and really that abruptly arrest our senses. We know that this has been measured. We know that sounds that are beautiful by the way they are harmonious contribute to our sense of well-being rather than create dissonance. And the list can be extended here. So when Dostoevsky proclaimed that through the mouth of one of his characters in one of his classics, right, but spoken by Prince Mushkin in The Idiot, that the beauty will save the world. What he meant, of course, there, and it has been polemized ever since, what's the true meaning of that, is the beauty in a sense of its primordial state of affairs in as far as what beauty here comprises. And for Dostoevsky, of course, who, as we know, was a deeply spiritual being, the beauty represented here that trinity that is always, always together with that what represents here by goodness and truth. So the beauty is not seen here in isolation from very important counterpart as truth. And that what also is represented by something which perhaps could be now borrowing, let's say, Asiatic thought, Indic thought, which I've opened the prologue of the book with, giving that analogy, that there is this trinity with which the Vedic yogic culture speaks of, beauty as exemplified through the terms Shivam, Satyam, Sundaram. Shivam as that auspiciousness, that goodness, inherent goodness. Satyam as that truth, in its reference to absolute truth. And Sundaram as that what the beauty here represents. And that trinity here comprises the foundational quality, that substratum upon which experience itself rises, just as the being consciousness bliss. It is just a different way of speaking about it. So these are the foundational qualities of being. So beauty here is inseparable from our beingness. And it is through beauty we have direct communion with the divine essence of who we are. And that's why the allusion here, and spoken about it in terms of the hidden path. Because it's so obvious, but it is hidden, because it's not in terms of this like a pavement that is being outlined. It has to be discovered by each and every one of us. Just like that secret little pathway we can walk in each time we feel that there is a need for retreating into the essence of what really gives us that sense of communion.
Mhm. Yes, what I also found very remarkable, you say also that if you can truly connect to beauty with your every cell and surrender to it, then you will bring worship into everything you do. To me, that sounds almost like a chemical process of approaching life. So
Very much so, very, very much so. Yes, I like that you bring that analogy here to the alchemy, because it is an alchemical process. Of course, maybe it would require another occasion to speak about this in terms of the essence of all desires with which we are coming into this world, and this perspective of what desire, the role of the desire, and what drives the desire. And of course, the different schools, different approaches have their different understanding of the purpose, role, value, or lack of thereof in terms of what desire. Desire can rob us, and desire can also be the greatest source of fulfillment. It's this attitude towards desire to understand what desire truly represents, where it comes from, why are we driven by something, what is it that it drives us. So it is from that point of view that following the intentions that spring forth from our heart is what gives us direct access to the realization of the very essence of why we're here as well. Because that, in turn, has this a quicksilver-like capacity to turn that what is basically comprised of the basic metals, what comprised here of this identity with the mortal, with the passing, with the transient, and turn it into the experience of pure gold, of timelessness, of who we are. So this, the alchemy here, is that, and beauty here, or rather, not the beauty itself, but the capacity, willingness to follow the desire truly from where it rises, is the touchstone. The touchstone that acts as that philosophers coveted key to the transformation. So the alchemy of that is truly here at all times.
yes, and that's what drives us again, yeah. So also there was one sentence from an intro to your book which still resonates in me, and it says, it is an open invitation to all to reclaim their legitimate role of being an artist of heart who beholds all creation with an eye of non-dual perception. So how are we all artists of heart?
Well, it's something which I always felt all my life, that I think maybe all children, when we are children, feel that. But because it's somehow not possible to convey that, because obviously this goes through the phases of growth and the phases of that education, which is inseparable from imposing our ideas and indoctrinations, which, ideas can be imposed in various ways. Indoctrination is, of course, one of them, and the line is often very slim. So my understanding is that we all come here as artists. We all come. Every child is ready to create, always. In fact, every child creates all the time. That's what they do. That game, play, it's a constant state of creativity. We don't know at what point that is being halted and becomes a tedious affair of trying to square the round peg with what life is, one's responsibility in it. Yes, of course, we all have to adhere to this process of growing up. I'm not saying that one should forsake this educational process, and there is also greatly, let's say, influential figures in our culture, in the history, who have been trying to reevaluate this, revisit and re-educate. The people who came up with the fundamental critical assessment of the whole educational system. And all these figures, from Rudolf Steiner, right, to the systems that are incorporated into the Waldorf schools, right, and to Montessori, in Uspensky, all of them shared that view that we are creative beings. Creativity is our birthright, the essence of what makes us happy. We can be immensely successful, but if we don't feel creatively satisfied, we'll never be satisfied. This is one thing that we need to all realize. This is something which should be reminded us from a very early age. So this attempt, in a way, is to share that passion with all fellow human beings whom I consider to be artists. Not just those who are artists per se, because they paint, sing, play, whatever. No, because the artist here is the very expressive potentiality of awareness. So in other words, the perspective here is not only we are artists at heart, each and every one of us, because of this creative urge to express, but more so because consciousness, awareness itself, here is seen from the perspective of the Creator. So, and this is, I think, also repositioning somehow, reconciling maybe centuries of religious indoctrination as well, that there is some Creator, some kind of intelligence, and we are here part of that. No, that Creator is I am. I am that. And that creative expression is the very source of why that creativity is being poured out of my own being for the sake of my own glory, for the sake of my own ecstasy, for the sake of bliss, is what really this life is about, and as far as my understanding goes. So of course there was this urge to share that in whatever way possible.
I would like to read another quotation, which I think ties in here beautifully. It goes, this path is for the artist inherent in the embodiment of a sentient being. Therefore, this path is for the one who is reading these words in search of a recognition and reaffirmation that this world is an expression of the self, a formidable wisdom, and an effortless play of the all-pervading union of the knower, the knowledge, and the known. So I'm aware there's a whole philosophy behind it, so probably it's not easy to just briefly comment on it, but maybe again we can give it in a nutshell.
Sure. Well, this is really using the Vedic paradigm of the seer, seeing and seen, which basically the most comprehensive exposition on the nature of experience itself. And in as much as we understand what seeing and seeing here represent, in their togetherness, because this is always together. Seer represents this innermost subjectivity, seeing the very process, the energetic process, and seen is the objective sphere of experience. And of course, it's not just in reference to the visual state of affairs, it's everything. Every subtlest mental of the processes here is due to the mechanics of the seer, seeing and seen, or observer, observing, observed. So this trinity, in Vedic terms expressed as Samhita of Rishi Devata Chandas, represents the very modality of how awareness modifies itself into experience for the sake of being able to have direct cognition of itself. So it's a self-referral process. It is through the experience, according to the Vedantic perspective, through the experience that awareness throws its own luminosity back onto itself. And in order to do that, it needs to come up with this instrumentality of experience. And the instrumentality of experience is what the observer, observing, and observed stands for. Because it's always three, always. Down to the gross experience through the senses, to the most refined concept, contemplating on the essence of our divine selfhood, thinking, praying, all these most refined mental processes have that modality intact. So this is what it really, in a nutshell, really stands for. So experience, in a way, we could say, is the mirror of awareness, where awareness contemplates its own magnificence.
Yes. Maybe let's get back to beauty for a second, because I think we have not spoken about this analogy to Ananda when we were talking about beauty. In a way, certainly this is again another term, but I think it is one which our readers can relate to very well, because it's an important term in yoga also. So in which way is it synonymous to beauty?
That's a very good question. So the term Satchitananda is something that has been with us for now quite a few decades here in the West. Satchitananda, being consciousness bliss. It's here stands for the substratum of all there is, the very quality of awareness, the very quality it has. If we are to speak about it, then these are the fundamental qualities that are changeless: being, consciousness, bliss. What do they stand for? What do they represent? Being stands here for that, what the term here represents, as that beyond any comprehension, beyond any thought, feeling. So in other words, being here is concealed within itself in utter and complete incomprehensive status, unless there is a possibility of that being reflected back onto itself, and this is the quality of consciousness. So in other words, like my own teacher, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, used to say, that being would have been remained forever in oblivion to itself, if not for being rescued by consciousness. So being here, to continue with that metaphor, is being rescued by that quality of consciousness. So Sat would forever remain unattainable, imperceptible, abstract category, without chit. Chit is the quality which gives this rise to being conscious, conscious of itself. And that gives tremendous sense of joy. And that is known as Ananda, bliss. So Sat Chit Ananda has that relationship with being way too abstract, inaccessible. It is only through consciousness that we can contemplate being. And consciousness is available only to those for whom there is enough of conscious experience to contemplate that. Whereas Ananda, as a quality, is something which is, as it were, can be taken for granted. Because all of us experience joy, irrespective of where we come from, what life we live. And even though these may be joys of a relative nature, all joys can be spoken of as reflective phrase of Ananda, because Ananda is a substratum. In that regard, in relationship to beauty, Ananda here is an expression of beauty. So it is through that experience that we are partaking in the essence of who we are. So in a way now, to equalize this, to democratize this understanding, all of us are already given the experience of our divine essence at any time we get in touch and with contact with the sense of beauty. And now I have to add this, no matter how superficial or no matter how profound that is, it still works intact. So in a way, this is to, that if we are to build the arch here in our conversation, it takes or connects what we spoke earlier about the healing qualities of beauty, because that's what puts us in touch with ourselves as conscious beings, and that naturally reflects the beingness in us. So this is the marvel of creation, where every creature, human being certainly, is given that capacity to experience the essence of who we are each time we are in touch, in contact with beauty, because that's expression of Ananda. It's the most tangible, open to all. It doesn't require any philosophical or any meditative, let's say, experiences as when it comes with consciousness. So therefore, it is, we could say, the generosity of the way the creation functions. So we all are given on a daily basis access to that, what we are, and through the experience of beauty.
Yeah, I think that might be a very beautiful statement to end with, and we have covered really a lot, but I feel a little bit tempted to also ask about that chapter which delves into the Natya Shastra. And though Rasa and Bhava are a very huge topic on their own, maybe you could also briefly introduce these two.
The terms. Well, rasa is a very complex term in Sanskrit, which is translated variously depending on the context that's being used, because it is used in Ayurveda, for example. It denotes different tastes, rasa, flavors, rasa. Everything has different tastes, flavors. The term itself, the etymology of the term, is that it has the quality of juice, rasa. It's essence, juice, sap. And but also rasa can be spoken of in terms of our emotions. And therefore it can be spoken of in terms of dramaturgy, in terms of theater and arts. So when Rasa, for example, spoken in Natya Shastra, which is the treatise on drama, the most ancient one, which is like the matrix of all the arts, which gives the birth to all the arts, in likewise, not just in India, but in ancient Greece, in the cradle of the Western civilization. The theater is where the arts are being given that place of cradling. This is where all of them spring forth, all without exception. So rasas here correspond to emotional responses we experience when we are in contact with a particular expressions of, let's say, a play, something creative put on. And of course, this extended to all forms of art. And that in turn is linked to the way we are also wired to experience, the way we emote. Emotions play a tremendous role and import here with regard to this. And Natya Shastra makes this connection because the treatise itself speaks of the way the art meant to serve, again, as that link which otherwise may be weakened or severed, linked to the essence of who we are. The possibility to reconnect here for a common folk is given through the experience available in the art form, through the art form. In this case, in the case of how Natya Shastra was conceived, as the treatise on drama. And the bhava, on the other hand, is this something which is a lingering that is left after particular emotive experience taking place. Just as if we lit up an incense, and then after that incense is finished burning, then this lingering scent left in a room for much longer than the duration of, let's say, at least when a good incense is being burned, then that what bhava can be here compared to. It's that after effect that we're left with. So that emotive state translates now in a feeling. That's what bhava here represents. And we know that there is a deep connection between emotions and feelings. Emotions are more fleeting. So rasas are constantly change, whereas feelings are more stable. If we examine the way we feel, inevitably we fall victims to the way of the language. If we examine the way we feel, we know that to be true. We can move from one rasa to another in quite a rapid manner. But when we are given to a certain feeling, then that would have to, as it were, have its duration. So this connection between rasas giving rise to particular bhavas play a tremendously important role in all classical arts in India, particularly to this day, to the importance that is given in the classical Indian music. In the classical Indian music, the whole theory and the whole structure of ragas, this rag, right? These ragas, these melodies of nature, which is all linked to the particular prevalent vibrations at a particular time of the day, right? And, or sometimes seasons, like there is for example, rag meg, which corresponds to the rainy season, the melody of rain. And there are ragas, let's say early morning raga, like rag lalit, which corresponds to this very, very slow awakening time of the dawn, to the, let's say, late rag of the morning, al-hai bilaval, then to the bhairavi, bhairav, and all this to the something which is more of a pace of the day, and then into the marva, the afternoon, all the way into the ragas of the evening, Shankar or Kanhara. There are many, many different ragas. There are many, many different ragas, all corresponding to particular phases. But the meaning and the purpose of these ragas is that they invoke a certain bhava. Likewise with rasas. Rasas are here to invoke a certain feeling which gives also this, which puts us in touch to a much greater degree to that what we meant to feel. Because according to this depth present in Indian civilization, we are here to feel. This is something where I myself would like to give more time in the work I do, as you know, in this guide, right, in the role of the guide, holding these programs and so forth, transformative immersions, we call them, these retreats. The importance of feeling. We are here to feel the fullness of who we are. And the fullness here is inseparable from the full spectrum of what the fullness here represents. And yet all these different hues, different colors are illumined by one and only transcendent, translucent rasa, known as Shanta, which was introduced by the aforementioned Abhinavagupta to enrich the Natya Shastra with his famous gloss that he gave, as it were rescuing Natya Shastra from otherwise secular domain and giving it, anchoring it through tantric understanding in Vedic culture. Because Shanta Rasa here is the 9th, altogether there are 8 classically spoken of rasas, emotive states. He brings the 9th, Shanta Rasa, and emphasizes that all these are different colors of the rainbow of the spectrum, illumined by one translucent light of awareness. And that's what we are at the beginning of every experience, and that's where experience falls back into, is what gives this full circle a possibility of closure, and where we indwell, as it were, in our essence. Again, a homecoming.
I'm glad we've included this. Thank you so much. Okay, so have a nice evening.
And you too. Thank you. Thank you, Nina.
Thank you.